2024 applies to all public lands that have been granted to public institutions, whether by way of freehold, leasehold, or any other form of grant. The days of public institutions entering into public-private partnership agreements with public lands without the approval of the president are obviously over, and any person who enters into any transaction does so at his or her own risk. All these measures have been put in place to ensure the protection of public lands and to regulate their utilization, ultimately in the public interest. Aside these preventative measures, pursuant to Section 236 of the Lands Act 2020, Act 1036, which enjoins the state to take steps to recover encroached public lands, the ministry constituted a public lands protection team to work with the Lands Commission to protect public lands from encroachment and recover those that have already been encroached. The team, in collaboration with the Lands Commission and the Ghana Police Service, has undertaken a number of operations to recover encroached public lands. The Commission is also working with the Ghana Police Service to provide protection for all public lands and prevent them from further encroachment. We have also engaged ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies, to take steps to protect lands acquired for their use or which fall within their jurisdiction of the assemblies, in accordance with Section 236 of Act 1036. Honorable Minister, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, there is also the issue of the state returning lands to pre-acquisition owners. Let me use this opportunity to respectfully make a very important distinction between Article 26 of our national constitution, which requires that the state give pre-acquisition owners the first right to acquire compulsorily acquired land, when the state no longer has a need for the land, and instances where the state returns portions of compulsorily acquired lands to pre-acquisition owners in lieu of compensation or some other consideration. As the Supreme Court explained in the case of prohibited III and Attorney General, 2010 Supreme Court of Ghana Law Report 904, Article 20 has a futuristic intention and does not apply to lands acquired by the state prior to the coming into force of the Constitution. However, since the colonial era, from the Public Lands Ordinance of 1876 through State Property and Contract Act 1960, CA4, to the Lands Act 1962, Act 125, the existing law before the coming into force of the Constitution, the state has always been enjoined to pay compensation for the acquisition of any land at all material times prior to the coming into force of the Constitution. Therefore, the government was under an obligation to pay compensation for any land compulsorily acquired by the state. In some cases, however, no compensation was paid for the acquisition of these lands. When government receives a petition for the release of some of these lands, the petition is examined on its merits through a series of assessments, evaluations, and negotiations. Indeed, some of these petitions and negotiations transcend different governments. For example, in respect of the Kumasi Sector 18 lands, the Cabinet of President John Dramani Mahama first approved the redevelopment scheme on 1st September 2016 and authorized the return of 50% of the land affected by the redevelopment to the Golden Stool in lieu of compensation, which culminated in the publication of the state lands Kumasi Sector 18 Redevelopment Project Instrument 2021 EI 432. Suffice to say, ladies and gentlemen, that this is not the first time government has released lands to pre-acquisition owners. By EI 8 of 204, government released some 360 acres of Nungua Otinshi lands acquired in 1978 for the Center for Scientific and Industrial Research to the pre-acquisition owners. By EI 15 of 209, government released 99 acres of the Adentan land acquired in 1968 for West African Secondary School to the pre-acquisition owners. By EI 16 of 209, government released 114.055 acres of the Accra Mempeasem land acquired in 1974 for the Accra Training College to the pre-acquisition owners. By a lease made in 2009, government released 974.53 acres of the Nungua land acquired in 1940 for livestock farm to the pre-acquisition owners. And by EI 17 of 8th November 2012, government released almost 250 acres of the Medina land acquired in 1977 for the Department of Social Welfare to the pre-acquisition owners. This list, obviously, is not exhaustive, but only seeks to demonstrate that it is not novel for government to release public lands to pre-acquisition owners for one reason or the other. What is important at all material times is the consideration whether or not it serves the public interest. Distinguished guests, while protecting existing public lands, government has also been acquiring additional lands to increase the public land estate of our country to meet our developmental needs, including the 13,230 acre land at Afienya, Dewenya for industrial enclave and urban development, the 509 acre land between Afienya and New Akradi for railway development, and the 237 acre land in Tamale for the University for Development Studies, amongst others, all acquired in 2018. Several schemes are being implemented in Kumasi Sector 18, which comprises of Rich, Danyame, and Inshiasu residential areas, Old Tamale Airport, and Cape Coast Ridge Sector 1, 2, and 3 residential areas. We are also aggressively pursuing a digitalization program to digitize the records, including legacy records, of the Lands Commission to promote expeditious land service delivery across the country. Since the introduction of the Enterprise Land Information System, the Lands Commission has been vigorous in ensuring seamless migration of manual operations onto the system. And today, selected services of the Commission, such as consolidated searches, stamp duty assessment and payment, plan approval, among others, can be done online from the comfort of your homes. The Commission, in collaboration with the Ghana Association of Bankers, has also introduced an online portal for banking institutions to access its services digitally from their offices. Additionally, the 6 new regional offices of the 6 new regions, namely Ahafo, Bono East, Northeast, Oti, Savannah, and Western North, operate fully digital as we speak today. And we are in the final stages of engaging a private partner to work with the Commission to deliver a holistic digitalization of land services, which will ensure that the Lands Commission and all its regional offices operate fully digital. Honorable Minister, friends from the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a lot has been done within this short period that the akufo-addo government has been in power. Is always the public interest. The people who sold some of our public lands, which has resulted in some misunderstanding and litigation with some public institutions, have had a temerity to turn around to accuse this government of the very acts they perpetuated. Fortunately, the records are still intact, and we know who sold these lands, which have been repackaged as evidence of state capture. In the spirit of transparency, the President of the Republic, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has directed the compilation of a list of all public lands that have been transferred, leased, sublet, or sold since the inception of the Fourth Republic on 7 January 1993. A dedicated team of men and women at the Lands Commission are working to put together this list, the details of which will be made public once the exercise is complete, and the Ghanaian people will have the opportunity to scrutinize this list and come and make conclusions for themselves. Let me hasten to add that the grant of public lands for development in and of itself is not necessarily wrong. As population grows with competing needs for land, it becomes necessary to change the use of some of these lands to to meet the developmental needs of the nation. For instance, the Labone and South Labone estates were originally acquired in 1902 for coconut cultivation, but had to be given to the State Housing Company to develop them into a residential area. The lands at Botema, which now hold the Botema Estate, Sports Complex, and Aquatic Center, were acquired for livestock farm in 1940. Airport residential area, as well as portions of Airport West and East Legon, were originally acquired for aerodrome services, but have been developed into one of the prime areas of our capital city. Cantonments and switchback residential areas, parts of Roman Ridge, Jowulo, and Achimota residential area are just a few of such examples. Indeed, in the case of Obito Techru, the third and Attorney General, Doche JSC, after citing some examples like the Accra Race Course land, which was converted for use at the Accra International Conference Center, and the Makola No. 2 Market, which was converted into a modern car park, concluded that, and I quote, "Once the use to which the land is to be put is not restricted to any personal or individual interest, but one to which the general public will have a benefit or the benefit of the project will inure to the entire country either directly or indirectly, the public interest purpose will be deemed to have been adequately catered for," end quote. The overarching question all the time should thus be, what use was a particular land put to? Does it serve the public interest? Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as managers of public lands, we are not oblivious of our fiduciary duties to the people of Ghana, and under the able and outstanding leadership of President Akufo-Addo, we will continue to discharge these duties transparently, anchored on the highest standards of integrity, candor, and utmost good faith, to ensure the protection and judicious use of public lands in the public interest and for the ultimate benefit of the people of Ghana, the true owners of these lands. I am happy to report to the country that the public lands of Ghana are intact and secured under this current government. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. I'm just excited about the clarity of expression and thoughts. I don't think there is anyone who would have any doubts that Ghana's lands are in safe hands after listening to you, Honorable Minister. It's not just about the presentation, but also the facts. You spoke about leases and you gave us dates. In this day and age and in the face of the implementation of right to information, it is as simple as filing a search and you will be able to get the facts at Lands Commission as to when any transactions on a particular land were undertaken. I am excited, Honorable Minister, also for the fact that we are digitalizing the land services in Ghana. It's one area that people have a lot of concerns. Even young people who have business interests or those who want to acquire for residential purposes. It's not about having the money, but sometimes you are not sure if what you are procuring is supposed to be up for sale. So this digitalization would really bring so much relief to the public. Honorable Minister mentioned so many things, but most importantly, about the laws regarding expropriation. Honorable Minister mentioned that there's been a time, or at all times, if government requires any land for the purpose of development, they acquire it from either families, communities, clans, or stools, or skins, if I should say. But when government no longer has need for the use of such lands, the families, pursuant to Article 20 of the 1992 Constitution, would have the first right of refusal. Honorable Minister mentioned some case law and also took us through chronologically some of the instances where allegations have been made regarding sale of public lands, but you realize that it did not even happen under the Akufo-Addo Bawumia-led government. There's also been instances where there is protracted litigation on the land for so many years. So it is not sufficient that you just pass by some place and you see some developments happening and all of a sudden you say this government is selling public lands. For all you know, there's been litigation back and forth from courts and so on. So, Minister, thank you so much for the clarity and for that insightful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now move to the second part, which is the Q&A session. If you have any question, this is the best time to ask. If we see your hand, David will bring the microphone to you. Okay, let's start from this way. We can take the first 5, okay, including you as well.
Thank you very much. My name is Fred Zhu and I report for City FM and Channel 1 TV. The very first question is, what is the status of the Agyapong forest? We didn't hear that in your presentation. We recently heard that the owners, the alluvial owners, have gone there. As to whether that is true or not, we want to hear that from you. Secondly, you made mention of the fact that the judge's bungalow was sold out in 2016 by the previous government. But I also got a bit of information that that particular lease was later withdrawn and the current government put up a committee to assess the situation, and that same portion of land has been reallocated to the same company, Frames Oil. How true is that? Maybe lastly, for me, I'll come back with the last one, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Fred.
Thank you very much. My name is Cliff, Ghanaian Times. I think my first question has been asked by the gentleman from City FM. So my second question, Minister, I would want to find out if we could get the definite period where the compilation of the leases that has taken place since the coming into force of this constitution. Yeah, because I think it's an exercise that will help the public a lot. So I'll be very glad if we could give us specific timelines where the public should be expecting the outcomes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Atamensa from Ghana News Agency. Yes, I want to add to what my friend from Ghanaian Times said, the compilation of the list of land that have been sold to individuals. The minister said so that the public will make conclusions. And so I was wondering, is it only public making conclusion or government will make directive that those lands should be retrieved back to the states? Then my second question is, over the past 32 years, there was a public sentiment that both NDC and MPP that had ruled this country for the past 32 years are both guilty of selling public lands to government appointees. And this is a perception most Ghanaians hold. What are you going to do as a minister to assuage the minds of people that the MPP government is not guilty of this perception? Then my third question. Yes, anytime court orders that a particular property that has been erected on an illegal land should be demolished, there is always public sentiment about it, that how can you allow such property be demolished and all these things, and it brings like sentiment against the ruling government. I want to find out your government, what has been measures taken to make sure court directives are carried out without any sentiment. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, so the third question has to do with the coalition of La Association. They've recently held a demonstration where they presented a petition to the office of the president. Their request or demand was simply that the land under contention with the military is given them or is given back to them. They said they've received some, but anytime they go to the rest of the portion of the land, they face this form of aggression from the military. What is the status or the facts on these particular issues? Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will take the last question for this round and take Honorable Minister's responses and come back to you.
Hello, my name is Emmanuel Bohoxen, Daily Graphic. Minister, you made mention of the fact that on the 17th of August 2021, the President issued a directive that before any public institution can lease or alienate any public lands, it has to do through the express approval of the President through the Minister. Then recently, Cabinet has also issued a similar directive. I want to find out, since this directive was issued, have all the public institutions complied with it? And have you had any cause of any public institution that has not complied with it? And if they've not, has any step been taken to retrieve back the lands that were allocated, in default or without this directive? That's my question.
Okay, thank you for the questions. So we'll go to Honorable Minister for his responses and come back to you.
So thank you very much. Let me just begin by saying that I'm very encouraged by the nature of the questions and how nuanced they are. That's how it should be. You observe that in every election cycle, this matter comes up. And I believe that this discussion should be an ongoing one, which is devoid of partisanship. But unfortunately, you have the situation where in 2008, we all remember the heightened agitations politically about public lands, about Ghana lands are being looted, and this and that. And 2009 to 2017, we didn't see any substantive response to those allegations. Here we are in 2024, where we are 3 months to an election, and that same effort is being made to whip up public sentiments against government. Public lands are being sold, Ghana lands are being stolen and grabbed and looted. All of them are false, as you can tell. And as I say, I throw the challenge that anybody can step forward to tell me that, Mr. Minister, this Ghana land is being sold, this particular land has been taken, this appointee has been allocated this land. At least since I've been minister, I can put my hand in fire that nobody can bring any evidence to prove that. And the rule of this discourse is records and is data. And the data is there at Lands Commission. And anybody has any contrary data, they can put it forward. And that is what I've done, to put out the data, to put out the records, to establish that those allegations are palpably false. They are only motivated by political considerations. And that's why I'm happy that you media people are asking the substantive questions, the questions that have to be addressed. The first question came from the journalist from City FM and Channel 1 about Achimota Forest. I think Achimota Forest, I've given an update on it over and over again, but I'll repeat it, I'll reiterate it. You remember that I issued a 48-paragraph statement, the 25-page statement, which set out the entire history and the issues relating to Achimota Forest. And I did indicate that as far back as 5th September 2013, His Excellency President Mohammed's government granted cabinet approval for the return of some of this land to the Owu family. And at the time I became minister, 362 acres of the land had been concluded, leases had been given in respect of those lands. Some of them, decisions had been made that 362 of the Achimota Forest lands be returned to the Owu family for one consideration or the other. And that transcended from President Kufuor's government all the way to President Akufo-Addo's government up to 2021 when I became minister. We set up a team. We went into negotiations with Achimota Forest because we were concerned about the ecological integrity of the forest, and we wanted a buffer. We wanted a buffer between what the Achimota Forest, the Owu family will have, and what will now constitute today's Achimota Forest. And we were able to negotiate a reduction of 100 acres out of the 362 acres which had been cast in iron by previous governments, and the current administration had been bound legally by previous governments for the release of 362 acres of the Achimota forest. And so as we speak today, we've negotiated a reduction of 100 acres. And now the parcel of land that is supposed to be released back to the old family is 262 acres. Now let me also make the point that we structured the arrangement in such a way that even for an individual or anybody to take possession of the land, given the ecological sensitivity of the forest reserve, we put in place stringent before the person can take possession of the land. And so as I speak today, even though this transaction had been concluded a year or so ago, nobody is taking possession of even a square meter of Achimota forest land or a square meter of the land that has been given to the old family, because you are required to go through a very laborious process to satisfy us that, for example, you are not going to take the land and build a factory which will compromise the ecological integrity of the forest reserve as currently constituted. So it is still work in progress, and people have applied to take possession of portions of the land. They are going through the process. They have to go through EPA. They have to go through LUSPA. They have to go through the Assembly. They have to go through Forestry Commission. So it is detailed, and that's the update I can give you. There's a question on the withdrawal of lease by the Judicial Service land. So this is what happened. The land was sold in 2016. And with the greatest of respect and in all humility and modesty, I'm a lawyer, and I believe that the lawyers will appreciate it. For the purposes of the law, the land is sold when the lease is executed. When you have a lease between the president of Ghana, which is normally the way the lease is structured, acting through the chairperson of the Lands Commission, and the lessee, and the lease is executed, the land is sold. So the semantics about a lease was withdrawn and investigations were conducted and the rest, I don't buy any of those semantics. The land was sold in 2016. When the new government came into office, under Minister Amewu wanted to satisfy himself about the processes leading to the grant of the lease. And so he asked the Lands Commission to hold on with further processes. And there can be further processes, as in applying for title and so on and so forth. So he asked that they should hold on with the further processes until he satisfied himself with the facts which led to the lease of this land. And of course, the minister was right to do so, because this was land which belongs to the judiciary. And if land which belongs to the judiciary has been leased, it is just right that the minister takes informed decisions. And after the minister's investigation, he came to the conclusion that the lease is unimpeachable and that there's little or nothing that he can do about the lease. In any event, if the minister had come to the conclusion that the grant of the lease was wrongly done or that he wanted to cancel the lease and the rest, the lessee had the right to sue. The lessee would have had recourse in the courts of our country. And so, for my purposes, the allegation was that the Judicial Service lands were sold under this government of President Akufo-Addo, and that is evidence of state capture. And when these allegations are made, my attitude is very simple. Put together the records, assemble the facts before we make any decision. When the facts were assembled, it turned out that the land was not sold under President Akufo-Addo. On the contrary, the land was sold under President Mahama in 2016. So that's really what it is. Ghanaian Times wants the definite timeline for the compilation of the I just consulted the Executive Secretary, and the Executive Secretary is of the view that substantial work is being done. As you know, the Lands Commission fundamentally still operates manually, even though there's been some digitization, and this is compilation across the country, and the Lands Commission is a decentralized institution. So it takes a bit of time. It takes time and effort to be able to put all of this together. But I'm very comforted and encouraged that the Executive Secretary is giving the indication and assurance that substantial work is being done. And therefore, sooner rather than later, we will complete the exercise and we'll put out the information for the scrutiny of the Ghanaian people. It may be that at some stage, we may want to even just put out what we have so far while the work is completed. And then there's a question from, the question about, will government retrieve the land? Will we give a directive to retrieve the public land? I mean, if they were granted wrongly, or we think that the grant is fraught with fraud or impropriety or what have you. Why not? We will take steps to retrieve them. But always remember, when it comes to land transaction, they are steeped in law. So when you go, you have a lease, which is a contract inter parties, and is governed by law. It is not that straightforward to be able to cancel a lease or withdraw a lease. But if there's a need for it, we will take those steps. I can give you that assurance. There's a question about selling public lands to public appointees. Well, the rule of the game is evidence. I mean, if anybody has evidence that a public appointee has bought public land and is done so in a manner that offends the code of ethics of public officers, and that the person puts himself in a position of conflict of interest, why not? We will take a look at it. For myself, as a general rule, I do not think that public appointees should go anywhere near public lands. I think if you want land to buy, you should go and look for land in a private space and not public lands, because of the very thin line of conflict of interest. It is very easy for you to cross that line. But if we have evidence that any public appointees bought land and is done so inappropriately, we will be happy to look into that. Then there's the question from City FM about law and military, and that is a straightforward one. There is a long-standing issue which is transcended several governments. I inherited it. There were a lot of agitations at the time from the La Youth and also petitions from the La Traditional Council. I constituted a committee, a 5-member or so committee, with representation from the Ghana Armed Forces, from the La Traditional Council, from the Ministry, from the Lands Commission, that did thorough work, very, very detailed work, came up with their report. We've since granted a lease to the La Traditional Council, but the Ministry of Defense is engaging the La Traditional Council and the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources for an arrangement which will ensure that the taking of possession of the land does not result into unnecessary controversy. As you know, whenever you are dealing with the military, you have to be sensitive. So we have to give them time and also accord them that space to be able to conclude this engagement. So it is still work in progress, but a lot of work has been done. I've been to the La Traditional Council multiple times to brief them. A lease has been granted in their favor. That has been done. That has been concluded. Government is fully committed to returning these lands to them, which is why we went as far as granting them the lease. But the Ghana Armed Forces has concerns or issues they have to deal with, and rightly so, because they're a very important, sensitive institution. And the Minister for Defense and the Chief of Defense Staff is taking very important steps to resolve the outstanding issues for us to have an amicable resolution of this matter. And I'll use this medium an opportunity to crave the indulgence of the La Youth to continue to exercise restraint and patience whilst we go through this very complex process of finding a resolution to this long-standing matter. There's a question from Daily Graphic about President Directive and then Cabinet Directive. So let me give the distinction. The directive we gave earlier in 2021 was essentially directed at the Lands Commission, if you want, so that the Lands Commission was not to grant any public land without the prior written approval of the minister responsible for lands, acting on behalf of the president, who is the trustee for public lands. And there is a constitutional underpinnings to that. The president is the trustee of public lands. And therefore, both myself and the Lands Commission, we are acting for and on behalf of the president. The president is acting for and on behalf of the Ghanaian people. And so the constitutional rationale was sound, that if the president is the trustee and you are going to grant land in his name, which is why every public land is granted between the president of the republic and the lessee, we should have a mechanism where the president gives his imprimatur, gives his approval to the grant. So that is what was done. And that, I believe, the Executive Secretary of the Lands Commission and the Chair of the Lands Commission tells me that it's really helped in sanitizing the public land space. Because always remember that the Lands Commission is decentralized. So there could be, you could have land in, say, Nalirgu or Damangu or wherever, and it will be granted without even the knowledge of the Executive Secretary or the Chair of the Lands Commission. And when it becomes controversial, it is the president who gets criticized first of all, and then the minister, and then the chair and the Executive Dance Commission. But this one was really to clothe all of us authority to monitor how public lands are granted. And it is on that basis that I was, for example, able to reverse the grant of public lands in Tamale. If this directive had not been given in 2021, that could not have happened. The second one, which is a cabinet directive, that is directed at public institutions. What we observed was that public institutions were given land for particular purposes to help them to realize their core mandate or the purposes for which those institutions were established. But these public institutions then construe the lands which have been given to them as their lands, as in lands that belongs to them. And therefore, they go into all these public-private partnerships with private developers and say, this bungalow, we've given it to you through an MOU, build 10 houses, you keep 6, give us 4. The president took the view, the president and his cabinet took the view that that is not a proper judicious use of public lands, and that did not serve the public interest. So this directive is to say that no public institution, as opposed to Lands Commission, can go into a public-private partnership without the prior written approval of the minister. So, for example, if the Ministry of Information wants to demolish this building and build a 20-story building, and they go into a PPP arrangement with a private developer, and the private developer say, we'll raise this building down, we'll build 20-story building, we'll give it 10-story, we will keep 10-story. The Ministry of Information obviously will be better off with that kind of arrangement. But what we are saying is that for them to be able to do that, they need the approval of the president, because it's not all the time that those arrangements are in the public interest, and that is why we want to regulate them. So that's the distinction. Thank you very much.
Okay, I have seen some hands, so we'll take another round of questions. Let me start from the back, because they did not get to ask us, and then to John, Nana, and the two.
My name is Ebenezer Akufo-Addo with the Daily Guide. My question to Minister is on illegal mining.
Today, we gave a theme. You know, when we come to give briefs, it's also based on preparation. So we gave a theme on the state of Ghana's public lands. So sometimes when we move away, but please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Honorable. I know that I saw the theme, but Minister would have to address this one for me.
No problem. Go ahead.
Right. Yes, so former President John Mahama last month said he was going to grant amnesty to some illegal miners who have been prosecuted, because in his view, the kingpins have been left off the hook. I want your reaction to that, or you finish up with some details of the current state of some of this prosecution. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Okay, good morning, Honorable Minister. My name is Anapoku for Daily Searchlight. I have a problem where state lands or public lands are given by some individual churches. For instance, industrial area, go to industrial area, Ring Road, churches are springing up. And I know very well, when I came to Accra, there was Meat Marketing Board edifice where a church has bought that place. Why has the state sat down for some of these to develop? In fact, the youth need employment, but yet we are giving state land to certain, I'm not against the churches though, but why must we, as it were, give priority to churches instead of employment and establishments? And then my second question has to do with, if you remember, during President Kufuor's time, when he retired and wanted an office in Accra here, he was blatantly denied. In fact, a lot of hula baloo and some public outcry that he must go to his hometown and go and find office, but not here in Accra. And this time around, Akufo-Addo's time, the same thing is erupting. What do you think the situation is? Is it political or tribalistic or whatever? Because it beats my imagination why some regimes, they have free day, but others are being pelted or pested. And then my last question, there was an outcry about Dodowa Forest and I think Shire Hills, that people are encroaching that place. Are you aware? And if you are aware, what are you going to save those lands for Ghana? Thank you.
Thank you for the questions.
Thank you. My name is John Awuni. I represent Kencity TV. Yes, my question is, I I wanted to know either whether there are some international best practices that can be used to tackle these land issues. I'm asking this because, Ghana is a signatory. When you go to mining, Ghana is a signatory to the Minamata Convention that frowns on the use of mercury. Are there other international best practices that we can adopt to help fight this land grabbing issue? And the second question is more general though, but I wanted to know the land grabbing brouhaha that we are hearing. The second one is what initiatives is the ministry doing to create public awareness and education on land rights and ownership in Ghana? That's more general. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Education, public education on land rights and ownership in Ghana.
All right, thank you very much. My question is to the Executive Secretary of the Lands Commission. A demonstration in Tamale tomorrow has been cancelled, and the demonstration was about the purported lease of the Caladan Park to a private developer. I want to find out from the Lands Commission the status of the Caladan Park in Tamale. Thank you.
Okay, are there any hands? Yes, Fred. Okay, yeah, Armstrong, then Fred.
My name is Joseph Armstrong. I work with TV3. Honourable Minister, thank you so much. My first question goes, I think my uncle here did mention about the Dodoa Forest, whether it sits within the Greater Accra region or that of the Eastern region, because the contention there has it that the people from Eastern are trying to claim ownership and also those in the Greater Accra are trying to claim ownership. So if we can bring finality to that. And then the last one is about the Sakumo Lagoon. We were there some few days ago with the Greater Accra Regional Minister, Honorable Titus Glover, and we did saw that what we tried preventing some years back under the leadership of Honorable Henry Korte, it looks like many more people have decided to put up fence walls right within the buffer and the core of the Sakumo Lagoon. A little bit worrying because we know the implications if these people are allowed to build other places. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take the last question from Fred.
Minister, just a quick one. We've heard so much about the sale of land by the previous government. Specifically, which lands or leases has this particular government given out so we can be sure and clear in our mind? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the questions. I take that to be the last question. But before I invite the Honorable Minister back, once again, I would like to acknowledge some dignitaries and also our media partners. We are joined this morning by the Chairman of the Lands Commission, Lawyer Alexander Kweno. We acknowledge you, sir. If you joined us from the comfort of your homes or offices, this presser is live on GTV, UTV, Joy News, Channel 1 TV, Net2 TV, Wuntumi TV, GBC Govern, Asasi Radio, ABC News, GH. We are streaming on Facebook at Ministry of Information, Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, Think News Online, and Kofigo Media. Thank you. Honorable Minister, we will now take your responses and concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. Amponsa from Daily Guide wants to know my view on President Mahamad's promise to give amnesty to illegal miners. Look, I've said this before and I want to repeat it. The thing about illegal mining is one that we will fail woefully once we reduce it to tool. There's no way you can win. Because if you look at the way illegal mining is done in the industry and everything else, the impact on the environment, our forest reserves, our river bodies, our landscape, and all of that is so enormous that if we are going to deal with it, we have to approach it from a non-partisan point of view. If we have to do anything, it has to be one that is really fit for purpose and which will help. I recall, for example, in 2020, President Mahama made his commitment, and I also recall NDC activists in the field promising illegal miners that they will release them from prison if they won the election. And in fact, some even went as far as saying that, you know, they will be free for all mining. They will be free for all mining on river bodies, in forest reserves, and indiscriminately. What that does is that it has a way of weakening the arm of the government, because the government is trying to enforce the rules, enforce the law for the, you know, larger good of the country. Because when you enforce the rules and you sanitize the mining industry, the small-scale mining industry, the beneficiaries of that kind of intervention is all of Ghana, including the illegal miners themselves. Because somebody talked about mercury, Minamata Convention, and the rest. These are things that are causing cancers, kidney diseases in mining enclaves. Kids are born and they are born deformed at birth, and so on and so forth. And therefore, I think we should be circumspect with the kind of promises we make. I mean, I cannot determine what the presidential candidate should promise or not promise. But what I can say is that these kinds of promises just, you know, muddy the waters, they make it partisan, and they weaken the resolve of the government to prosecute illegal mining and also to sanitize the small-scale mining sector. Of course, I mean, there have been a lot of commitments which have been made. For example, Vice President Dr. Bawumia is talking about establishing a minerals development bank which will finance these small-scale miners, and that is how you get the foreigners out of the system, and that is how you get them resources to be able to buy the needed equipment and be able to employ the best practices to have the Australian kind of small-scale mining situation in Ghana, or the Canadian one, or the American one. I mean, he's talking about, for example, giving $10 million United States dollars yearly to the Ghana Geological Survey Authority, which will get them to conduct geological investigations and find out blocked out areas. So we don't have the digging indiscriminately. If you are given a concession, the place has been explored, the place has been prospected, the place has been investigated, and we are certain that that concession is mineralized. And these are the measures that will not give amnesty to illegal miners. Anyway, I wouldn't make more of that. Daily Searchlight wants to know the issue of President Kufuor's land and the rest. Shouldn't bygones be bygones? This happened in 2009. So that's what I would say. And then churches and lands given to them. I think all of that, as I said, granting of public lands in and by itself is not wrong. It is how it is done, whether or not it's in the public interest. I mean, there are churches in Ghana who are doing so much, as we all will acknowledge, and building universities, building hospitals, you know, engage in developmental efforts across the country. So if a church of that nature needs land, for example, to build a university in a particular part of our country, and there's public land which is conducive for that purpose, why not? We should be able to grant that. But if you are granting lands to churches to, you know, I don't know how to put it, but to do other things which are not in the public interest, then we should take a second look at it. Dodowa Forest and Shire Hills encroachment, and whether or not it's in Eastern region or Greater Accra region, I think the issues of boundaries, we'll reserve them to the Ghana Boundaries Commission if they are responsible for that at all. And if they are not, I believe that we can have an administrative way of resolving it. And if it becomes difficult to resolve, I think the law court, the law courts can deal with them. I know that the courts have, for example, determined boundaries between Greater Accra and Eastern region in particular, because the nature of the two regions is so difficult to determine, delineate where is where, which is which, what boundary is Greater Accra, what boundary is Eastern region. So I'll leave it at that. Kencity TV is talking about land grabbing and international best practices and Minamata Convention. Of course, I know you are citing Minamata Convention as an example of an international best practice, because Minamata Convention relates to mercury, which Ghana is a signatory to, which we are observing. And so far, we've largely eliminated mercury from the mining industry of our country. But international best practices, yes, that's exactly what the Lands Commission is trying to do, to digitize the records of the Lands Commission. On my way here, I was pleased, and I should commend the Executive Secretary of the Lands Commission. On my way here, I saw extraordinary work being done at the headquarters of the Lands Commission. I saw contractors all over the place, because the Executive Secretary has a deadline of 1st October for us to commission the headquarters. So I see he's trying to catch up and trying to make sure that we get the new Lands Commission headquarters commissioned. And when it is commissioned, it's going to have one of the state-of-the-art data centers in our country. It's going to have a data center at the basement, which is going to be fit for purpose, going to be state-of-the-art, and which will help us with our digitization effort. I think a month or so ago, I commissioned the Greater Accra Regional Lands Commission office. And all of you, when you drive through the Lands Commission, you see that they have a new edifice. And we are building more. And we are digitizing the records of Lands Commission. And we are doing things that I should point out, Honorable Minister. And I think that for me, that is more exciting. And the Executive Secretary and I are on the same page, and we are working together on that. We said that, look, there are a lot of things that can be done which do not require, $1 million or $2 million or $10 million. And that does not require too much effort. That does not require infrastructure. And the example I always give him is that it doesn't cost $1 million to give a smile when somebody comes into the customer service of the Lands Commission to render a service. Because the Lands Commission is a service rendering institution. It's like a bank. It's like a teleco, where when you go, they need to treat you as a worthy customer of theirs. And the Executive Secretary has done quite well. I have paid surprise visits to the customer unit of the Lands Commission. I was pleased that, one, you have water, the place is air-conditioned, the young ladies welcome you nicely, the bankers where you go to pay, these little things. And I'm happy and I'm encouraged that this outstanding new Executive Secretary is putting in place a lot of measures to ensure that our land administration is fit for purpose. As you all know, as I stated in my statement, Ghana's land tenure system is different. Our lands are not vested in the state like several countries. So when you talk about international best practices, when you go to Europe, a lot of the lands in Europe, about 90 to 95%, are vested in the government. There's not like two lands or clan lands or family land. In Britain, most of the lands are vested in the crown, in the British crown. So administering them is much, much easier. When you go to Eastern Africa, like Kenya and the rest, Zimbabwe, lands are mostly vested in the government, in the state. But here in Ghana, the state has just about 10% of lands. About 90% of the lands are vested in stools, in families, in clans, and the rest. And so it's the Lands Commission that is now supposed to find a mechanism or a framework to administer all these lands, where we have all the attendant issues. I don't think that is a bad arrangement. I don't think it is wrong that the stools, the families, and the clans hold these lands. Not at all. On the contrary, I support it. I think that's a Ghanaian system, which our forebears fought for. Let it remain so. But we need to continue to work hard to ensure that the administration is fit for purpose, so that when you go to Lands Commission and they give you a record of land, that is the only record of that land, that land belongs to Madame Fatima Abubakari, and it belongs to her. Not that it belongs to her, belongs to another person, belongs to another person. Once you buy, instead of getting value, you buy litigation, and you have trouble. And a lot of Ghanaians are going through those troubles. We have to deal with them. Calandan Park, Tamale, demonstration. What I would say to you is that, look, when these things come up, let's assemble the facts. I don't have the facts here. So the Executive Secretary is going to immediately assemble the facts, and then we will put the facts out. It may as well be, like in the case of the Du Bois Center, that the land is not even being sold. And if it's been sold, when was it sold? And if it was sold at a particular time, why was it sold? And what sort of development is it going to be used for? And is it in the public interest? Let us put together all of these facts, and then we will make them available to you, and all of us can make an informed decision. Encroachment, yes, in Lagoon, Sakumono Lagoon. Yeah, I think a lot of work has been done about it. We did do a lot of work with Honorable Herikote. We intend to continue with Honorable Titus Glover in that respect. Which lands has been sold by this current government? You want CTFM? You wanted to know that? Look, what has happened is very simple. Some allegations have been put out, specific allegations. And those allegations were put out on the basis that these are evidence of state capture, that the government of President Akufo-Addo was engaged in state capture. And why did they come to the conclusion that the akufo-addo government was engaged in state capture? Because they've sold land A, they've sold land B, they've sold land C. And I said to you that for me, when those allegations are made, my first port of call is the Lands Commission. And my first request is that I want the facts, I want the data. The data has been assembled, the facts have been put out. It turns out that it's not the akufo-addo government that sold those lands. I don't understand partisan here. That's why I've been restricting myself to years. And you all know who was president in those years. We all know who was president in 2015 and 2016. The lands were sold in 2015 and 2016. So it was a specific allegation, and I'm giving specific responses. If somebody makes another allegation which turns out that those lands were sold under President Akufo-Addo, I will say so and say why. And then the Ghanaian people will make their own judgment. I want to conclude by repeating. Specific allegations were made. Parks and gardens land were sold. Judiciary land had been sold. All of these land have been sold by President Akufo-Addo. They constitute evidence of state capture. It turns out that these lands were not sold by President Akufo-Addo's government. They were sold in 2015 and 2016. Point. That's really that's what I've done. If anybody were to bring up an allegation of land that have been sold under President Akufo-Addo, and it turns out they've been sold under President, I will come out with the facts. There's absolutely no two ways about that. So by way of conclusion, let me once again thank the minister, the Honorable Minister, as always, for her extraordinary leadership and for putting this together for us. And to thank the Deputy Minister, my dependable Deputy Minister, the Honorable Kwesi Kunedu, Member of Parliament for Manhyia North, for the yeoman's job is done. I mean, they didn't sleep. They've been at it all night. And the Executive Secretary of Lands Commission and the Chair of the Lands Commission, and most especially you, and the media men and women for honoring our invitation. And to conclude by saying that we will continue to do everything possible to protect the public lands of our country and make sure that their management and utilization are in the interest of the Ghanaian people who are the owners of these lands. And to finally conclude that Ghana's public lands are intact and secured. I thank you very much for your attention.
Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister, Chief Director, Chairman of the Commission, Executive Secretary of the Commission and your team, our government spokespersons, our friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for today's presser. Minister, you've been so responsive. If there is an issue concerning your ministry, I'm not afraid at all, because I know you will meticulously gather the facts and come and engage the public, and that is what democracy is about. So thank you so much for once again honoring our invitation to discuss this matter of public interest with all of us. I also want to use the opportunity to thank our media partners, our press corps, the PR team at the Ministry of Lands, and also at Ministry of Information, and particularly those media houses that pick the feed live. GTV, UTV, Joy News, Channel 1 TV, Net2 TV, Wuntumi TV, GBC Govern, Asasi Radio, ABC News GH, and also our online partners. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Enjoy the rest of the day.